February 9th, 2009, Army Lieutenant Colonel Garnet Derby was killed in Iraq in a suicide car bomb attack. Joining us on the phone lines, former intel officer in the Army Ranger Battalion, Jonathan Wiens, on the show with us now. John, thanks for being with us this morning. Tell us why you think it's important to remember Lieutenant Colonel Derby today, especially after this 10-year anniversary.
Sure. I mean, not only was he a hero, but as Montanans should know, there were only 3 battalion commanders. Battalion commanding is a huge responsibility in the Army. You have, when you're deployed, up to 1,300 men under you, and there are only 3 of those that were killed in hostile fire in Iraq. And Lieutenant Colonel Derby, who was my commander for a period of time, was one of those. He died. He was a commander of the 3rd Battalion, 8th Cavalry Regiment, with the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood, Texas. And he's a native of Montana. He graduated from the University of Montana and first enlisted in the National Guard in Montana as a cavalry scout. And so he's a hero, and Montanans should remember that and remember him. He died at 44. He'd be 54 today, and like you said, Aaron, he passed away on February 9th, 2009.
I know you've talked with I know you served with him for kind of a shorter period of time, but you know some of the soldiers who served with him and knew him even more closely. What do they tell you about Colonel Derby?
Well, he was a kind, compassionate, great mentor. I remember sitting down with him and him discussing with me, what I wanted to do in life, where I wanted to go, and he was truly concerned. But he was also someone who was extremely driven, and that's what a commander like him can have the opportunity to sit on the sideline and not be in the fight. But he was out there with his personal security detachment, and they were doing a mission in Mosul, Iraq, which is was the last holdout for ISIS in Iraq up until 2 years ago. And it's such a dangerous city, and he went out as they were doing an operation and made sure he was right on the front lines with his men. And that's why he and 3 of his men, Sergeant Joshua Ward, PFC Albert Jex, PFC Joshua Roberge, and one of their interpreters, so 5 total were killed in that suicide attack.
I saw this piece from the Associated Press back shortly after he was killed. Brigadier General David Hogg recalled Colonel Derby said he was a, quote, gruff, knuckle-dragging guy. He was a superb dirty boots officer. He understood leaders lead from the front. So he was a guy who got out there and got dirty with the soldiers on the front line. He didn't just hide in the office.
Yeah, and the knuckle-dragging comment is our terms of endearment in the Army.
Yeah.
So if a general calls you a knuckle dragger, that's a good thing.
That's right. Yeah, better than being the PowerPoint flipper. That's for sure.
Yeah. That means he got after it. So that's why he was out front, and that's why he paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Glasgow, Montana native Jonathan Wiens, who eventually ended up serving as an intelligence officer for one of the Army Ranger battalions. Jonathan, thanks again for joining us this morning.
Sure, and I appreciate you taking the time to honor Lieutenant Colonel Derby. And what I was saying before is, we all look back on these wars and try to understand why they happened and make sense of it all. But as an intelligence officer, what I could tell you is when we were over there, and when Lieutenant Colonel Derby was over there, he was closest to the stream of foreign fighters, which used to fly into the airport in Damascus on a daily basis, and they'd come over in the dozens, and we'd meet them on the streets every day. But those who he met on the streets that day and many others were in any other event would have been trying to attack our homeland and come after us. So we took the fight to the enemy over there, and we destroyed them. And it was important, and what Lieutenant Colonel Derby did, and his sacrifice that he gave his life for was important, and we can't forget that.
You also talked about how the words being used to describe Colonel Derby by then Brigadier General David Hogg described him as a gruff, knuckle-dragging guy, dirty boots officer. All these are rough-sounding terms, but you were making the point here that, hey, this is This is, you couldn't find any better things to say. This says this guy was the real deal here. He wasn't just somebody who just wanted to sit around and drink tea and have people serve him. He was out there with the soldiers doing the work.
No, he went flying through the headquarters with his armor boots on. You know what I'm talking about, the knee-high leather boots that tankers wear.
Yeah, yep, tanker boots is what I called them.
Yeah, and I love when those old tankers wear that. And anyway, he loved wearing those, and he was always going through the headquarters in a flight in a hurry with those on. So he was a gruff, knuckle-dragging kind of guy, and obviously a great commander.
What do you think we as Montanans can do to remember Colonel Derby here on this, the Monday after this 10-year anniversary? I know that the Military Times has an Honor the Fallen webpage. I mean, even if it's just something as simple as sharing that with your Facebook friends or people on social media, just to remind them, hey, here's a Montanan who paid the ultimate sacrifice for us 10 years ago. Let's never forget these men and women. Any other thoughts on how we can help remember and honor these fallen warriors?
Yes, I think one of the biggest things for me when I was deployed, and is honoring this fallen soldier by sending supplies or letters or encouragement to those who are currently deployed, because that's what he would want. He committed his life to caring for soldiers and ensuring that they were successful in combat, and that he brought them home. And I know, Aaron, when you were deployed as well, there's three things that encourage a serviceman. It's hot chow, brushing your teeth, and a letter.
That's true.
So those are the three. I mean, that's what the Army publishes as the three morale boosters for a soldier.
I was driving down King Avenue in Billings. This was a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden I could hear a Chinook helicopter, and it could have been a National Guard one, it could have been the Blaine Aviation one here, in Billings. But I heard the Chinook, and all of a sudden I got this rush, and I was looking around, where's it at? Because that's when you knew your mail was coming, when you'd get those care packages and letters in the mail. And so it's something that still never goes away, is it? So.
No, and I remember getting those packages from a group of ladies in St. Marie, Montana,
yeah.
And there's other ladies who would write you from the middle of nowhere and start writing you letters, and every time you receive that, it's important. So that's what I would encourage folks to do. If you're going to honor what others have given, then honor by giving to those who are currently serving.
That's a great message. Yeah, honor those who are still in the fight. And we know we've got Montanans who are still over there. I'd imagine in Syria, where there's still some intense fighting going on, but we've also got Montanans in Afghanistan, that we talked to shortly before Christmas. Jonathan Wiens, hey, an honor to talk to you, my friend. Look forward to seeing you back in Montana, back home one of these days.
You bet. Thanks, Aaron.
All righty, great to talk with you. All right, yeah. If you check it out, if you just Google Army Lieutenant Colonel Garnet Derby, there's a militarytimes.com. It's an Honor the Fallen page. And so, yeah, feel free to share that story with your friends and remember the sacrifices of Colonel Derby and his family and friends.